Ornithopods represent one of the most successful groups of herbivorous dinosaurs during the Cretaceous. The most primitive members of the group were bipedal and relatively small-sized, while advanced members of the subgroup Iguanodontia became quadrupedal and developed large body size. Their major evolutionary advantage was the progressive development of a chewing apparatus that became the most sophisticated ever developed by a non-avian dinosaur, rivaling that of modern mammals such as cows. They reached their apex of diversity and ecological dominance in the Hadrosaurids. Gasparinisaura had a rounded head that was moderately elongated. The eye sockets were very large and placed in a high position. The rather long back of the head was pendant. Gastroliths discovered formed clusters of up to 140 rounded and polished stones in the abdomen with an average stone diameter of about 8 mm, representing about 0.3% of total body weight. They were voluminous enough to function as a gastric mill, a function sometimes denied for sauropod gastroliths because of their insufficient relative mass, being an order of magnitude lower. The hindlimb anatomy of Morosaurus and other elasmarians, including a slim metatarsus, suggests they were adept runners, differentiating them from other herbivorous dinosaurs of their time. Features in their relatives, like expanded chevrons and bony intercostal plates, likely enhanced their running ability by improving tail balance, musculature control, and breathing efficiency. A 2020 study on the growth rate of Morosaurus and Trinosaura revealed that, unlike their northern hemisphere counterparts, these Antarctic dinosaurs showed rapid growth with periodic interruptions, similar to South American relatives. This suggests that elasmarians thrived in cold southern environments due to existing adaptations rather than developing new ones. The discovery of Morosaurus, along with evidence of a related clade in Gondwana, supports the idea of faunal connections between Antarctica, South America, and other southern continents during the dinosaur era. This discovery also aligns with previously recognized links between the flora and marine invertebrate fauna of these regions, known as the Vedelian bioprovince. Trinosaura has been classified as a basal member of the clade Ornithopoda along with other ornithischians that had lived in the former supercontinent of Gondwana, which lived during the Cretaceous. Its only known skeleton comes from a subadult, with a small size of 1.5 meters. It was very lightly built and bipedal, with long legs built for running and a rigid tail to aid in balance during locomotion. Trinosaura is distinct from its relatives in a variety of ways, such as the shape of the ischium, back pelvic bone, and a large deltopectoral crest on the humerus, upper arm bone. It is also noted to have a slower growth rate than genera that lived in warmer climates, an adaptation to colder temperatures of the Antarctic. Hayteg Island was home to quite a few unique species right at the end of the Cretaceous. Zalmoxes was a member of the Rhabdodontids, a group of herbivorous ornithopod dinosaurs related to well-known names like Iguanodon. It had a chunkier build than its closest relatives, with a deep skull, a large beak and a rotund body. Like other rhabdodontids, it would have had powerful jaw muscles and ridged cheek teeth specialized for scissoring, adaptations for cutting up particularly tough plant matter. It was also quite small, about 2.4 meters long, although since the largest known fossils represent subadults, this may not have been its full size. A second species in the same genus lived on the same island and was actually slightly bigger. Knüppe proposed that the type species, which were smaller than their relatives elsewhere, adapted through insular dwarfism. A scientific paper from 2003 found that Zalmoxes most likely had a diet that consisted of tough fibrous plants like soft shoots, horsetails, angiosperms and ferns. Tenontosaurus was a medium-sized ornithopod dinosaur, with adults weighing around 1,000 kilograms and reaching lengths of 7 to 8 meters. It was a facultative quadruped, capable of both bipedal and quadrupedal movement, though likely more comfortable walking on all fours. Its diet consisted of low-growing vegetation, such as ferns and shrubs, and it had a powerful beak suitable for consuming various plant parts. Fossil evidence suggests Tenontosaurus was frequently preyed upon by Deinonychus, particularly juveniles. The species lived in diverse environments, ranging from arid to tropical, and showed a remarkable ability to adapt to changing climates. Fossils of Tenontosaurus are abundant in formations across North America, indicating its widespread presence and ecological success during the early Cretaceous period. Draconyx is a member of the Iguanodontia, a diverse group of herbivorous dinosaurs. It shows transitional features between earlier, more primitive ornithopods and later, more derived iguanodontians. This makes it an important genus for understanding the evolution of this group. It is known primarily from a partial skeleton, including a well-preserved hand with a large, curved thumb spike, which is characteristic of iguanodontians. This thumb spike may have been used for defense or foraging, similar to its relative, Iguanodon. Draconyx lived in what is now Portugal during the late Jurassic. The environment it inhabited was likely a lush, coastal region with abundant plant life, supporting a variety of herbivorous dinosaurs. Muttaburrasaurus was a large ornithopod dinosaur, measuring around 8 meters in length and weighing approximately 2.8 tons. Initially thought to be an iguanodontid, recent studies suggest it may belong to the rhabdodont group, which implies it was likely incapable of quadrupedal movement. Early reconstructions included a thumb spike, but this feature is now considered unlikely. It had a broad, flat skull with a pointed snout and a distinctive, hollow nasal bulge, possibly used for vocalization or display, although this remains speculative due to the lack of fossilized nasal tissue. The dinosaur's feet were long and broad, with 4 toes, supporting a robust build. Its powerful jaws were equipped with shearing teeth, but unlike more advanced ornithopods, Muttaburrasaurus lacked a tooth battery, limiting its ability to chew. The teeth grew directly beneath the existing ones, allowing only one generation of teeth to erupt at a time. This, along with the absence of a primary ridge on the teeth, led to the initial speculation that Muttaburrasaurus might have been omnivorous, possibly consuming carrion. However, later studies suggested that its dental structure was more likely adapted for eating tough vegetation, such as cycads, similar to the shearing teeth of ceratopsians. Valdosaurus is a dryasaurid known from the Isle of Wight in England, as well as the Hastings beds of West Sussex. It lived in the early Cretaceous, so sometime between 145 and 120 million years ago. Though it has had other species assigned to the genus, one was never formally described, and the other has been given its own genus from other locations in Europe. It would have been around 1.2 meters long, and it's known from fairly fragmentary remains. Having a close European relative of the American form Dryosaurus named led to most of the dryasaurid fossil material of Europe being referred to Valdosaurus. Dryosaurus had a long neck, long, slender legs and a long, stiff tail. Their arms, however, with 5 fingers on each hand, were short. They had a horny beak and cheek teeth. Some scientists suggest that it had cheek-like structures to prevent the loss of food while the animal processed it in the mouth. The teeth were characterized by a strong median ridge on the lateral surface. Dryosaurus subsisted primarily on low-growing vegetation in ancient floodplains. A quick and agile runner with strong legs, it used its stiff tail as a counterbalance. It probably relied on its speed as a main defense against carnivorous dinosaurs. A Dryosaurus hatchling found at Dinosaur National Monument in Utah confirmed that it followed similar patterns of craniofacial development to other vertebrates. The eyes were proportionally large while young and the muzzle proportionally short. As the animal grew, its eyes became proportionally smaller and its snout proportionally longer. Ankylopolexians would in the Cretaceous become one of the most successful groups on the planet, being both widespread and numerous in nature. Around this time, Ankylopolexians spread to Asia and Europe. Based on the holotype and the related genus Camptosaurus, when fully grown, Iguanodon would have grown up to around 6 meters long and would probably have weighed no more than around 400 kilograms. Studies suggest that the paleo-environment of the section of the Morrison Formation where it lived included rivers that flowed from the west into a basin that contained a giant, saline alkaline lake, and there were extensive wetlands in the vicinity. Camptosaurus is a relatively heavily built form, with robust hind limbs and broad feet, still having 4 toes. Due to the separate status of Iguanodon, it has become problematic which material from the Morrison Formation belongs to Camptosaurus. The specimens with certainty belonging to Camptosaurus dispar, from Quarry 13, have been recovered from very deep layers. The largest fragments from later strata indicate adult individuals around 6.8 meters long. The skull was triangular with a pointed snout, equipped with a beak. Its teeth were more tightly packed in the jaw compared to other Morrison ornithopods. Its teeth frequently exhibit extensive wear, which indicates that individuals in the genus had a diet of relatively tough vegetation. Based on studies of other iguanodonts, scientists believe they may have been able to achieve running speeds of 25 km per hour. A tiny fossilized embryo, referred to Camptosaurus, was retrieved from Morrison Formation strata at Dinosaur National Monument in Utah. Lurdosaurus, an unusual ornithopod dinosaur from the early Cretaceous, was estimated to have reached up to 9 meters long. It was proportioned very differently from its close relatives, with short stocky limbs, a wide barrel-shaped body, and a long neck. The bones of its hind feet also suggest the presence of a large fleshy pad to help support its weight. Basically, it looked an awful lot like an iguanodont trying to mimic a sauropod. Sometimes it's also interpreted as a semi-aquatic hippo-like animal, wading around the extensive waterways that stretched across North Africa at the time. There's currently no fossil evidence for this, however, so until somebody does a detailed study of its anatomy, we can only speculate what Lurdosaurus was actually doing. Lanzhusaurus lived in the Gansu region of what is now China during the early Cretaceous. A partial skeleton has been recovered from the Jehu group. It's been estimated to be about 10 meters in length and 6 tons in weight. The genus has been described as having astonishingly huge teeth, among the largest for any herbivorous creature ever, which indicate it was a Styracostoran iguanodont. The mandible, longer than 1 meter, suggests a very large size for the animal. Tooth enamel of this dinosaur was growing very rapidly. The study of Ankylopollexia neurobiology dates back to 1871, beginning with the examination of a well-preserved cranium, initially attributed to Iguanodon. Early researchers, like John Hulke, noted the challenges in accurately determining brain shape from the cranial cavity in reptiles. These early analyses revealed the small size of the brain, but detailed interpretations were limited. Hadrosaurs have since been recognized as having the most complex brains among ornithischian dinosaurs. John Ostrom's works in 1961 highlighted that hadrosaur brains likely only filled part of the cranial cavity, making endocasts useful but limited in revealing brain details. Later studies, including James Hobson's 1977 work on encephalization quotients, found that hadrosaur quotients were higher than many other dinosaurs, suggesting relatively advanced intelligence. In a groundbreaking discovery, 2017 research reported mineralized brain tissues from an iguanodontian dinosaur, indicating tightly packed neural tissues, possibly indicating higher intelligence than previously thought. Fuquosaurus was a relatively small ornithopod. In 2010, Gregory Paul estimated its length at 4.5 meters and its weight at 400 kilograms. Being a bipedal, optionally quadrupedal animal, it was similar in general build to Iguanodon. According to the describers, Fuquosaurus was exceptional in that its skull was not kinetic. The tooth-bearing maxilla would be so strongly fused to the vomer that a sideways chewing motion would have been impossible. It was assigned by its describers to Iguanodontia, although the presence of a posterolateral process of the sternum indicated that it likely also belongs to Styracosterna. Their cladistic analysis showed that Fuquosaurus was more derived than Iguanodon and Uranosaurus, but less derived than Alterinus. Iguanocolossus is a large, robust iguanodontid, probably reaching 9 meters long and weighing 5 tons in body mass. According to MacDonald and colleagues, it differs from other iguanodontians in having a contact surface for supraoccipital on caudomedial process of squamosal, curved in caudal view, cranial pubic process with concave dorsal margin but little expansion of its cranial end, postorbital process of the squamosal mediolaterally compressed and blade-like, pubis tapers to a blunt point, cranial extremity of preacetabular process of ilium modified into horizontal boot, axial neural spine blade-like and semicircular in profile, and the dorsal margin of ilium straight. It had stock metatarsals and a prominent left fibula measuring 63 cm. The maxilla preserves 14 alveoli. The presence of 2 concave surfaces suggests an elliptical and elongate antorbital fossa. Jinsusaurus has a length of about 7 meters and its skull is about half a meter long. Its snout was elongated with large nares and lacking an antorbital fenestra. The back of the skull was uncommonly wide with a small crest on top. The dentary of the lower jaw has at least 17 tooth positions. Its fossil was found in Yixian County in the Duangshengzi beds of the Yixian Formation in Liaoning, in China, having an oldest determinable age of 122 million years, during the early Aptian stage of the early Cretaceous period. It consists of a nearly complete skeleton, compressed on a slab. Jinsusaurus shows a mix of basal and derived features. Originally assigned to Iguanodontidae, later authors have referred it to the more general Iguanodontoidea. In 2010 a study concluded it was within this group a basal member of the more derived, Hadrosauroidea. Magnanimous is a large ornithopod measuring 9 to 10 meters long and weighing around 3 tons, a similar size to Iguanodon. The hand is broad and similar to other basal members of Iguanodontia, with a protruding thumb spine and a 5th finger. The descriptors established 9 distinctive features for this taxon, all autapomorphies. The dentary contributes to the front coronoid process of the lower jaw so that the last dentary tooth is located on the slope of the protrusion, instead of on the basis of it. The length of the shoulder amounts to 6 times the upper width, and 7 times the minimum width. In the shoulder the front processus acromion is facing on the other side of the rear projection. The straight processus prepubicus lacks end widening or grooves, with a partially covered obturator foramen. Iguanodon was one of the first dinosaurs ever discovered and scientifically described. Its name was given in 1825 by Gideon Mantell based on its tooth's resemblance to those of modern iguanas. Early depictions of Iguanodon showed it in a kangaroo-like pose with a spike on its nose. These interpretations were based on incomplete fossils and have since been corrected with more accurate reconstructions. It actually could walk both on 2 legs and 4 legs. It likely walked on all 4s when grazing and switched to 2 legs for running or when it needed to survey its surroundings. One of Iguanodon's most distinctive features is its large thumb spike. Initially thought to be a nose horn, this spike was later correctly identified as a defensive weapon or a tool for foraging. Besides the thumb spike, it had a unique hand structure. It had 3 central fingers that were likely used for walking and a 5th finger that may have been opposable, possibly aiding in grasping food or manipulating objects. Fossil evidence suggests that it may have lived in herds, as large groups of Iguanodon fossils have been found together, indicating they may have moved in packs for protection or migration. It had a complex chewing mechanism, where its upper jaw could move slightly outward while chewing, allowing it to grind plant material more efficiently. This was an advanced feature for an herbivorous dinosaur of its time. Unlike many other dinosaurs of the same period, Iguanodon did not have crests or frills on its head. Its head was relatively flat, with a beak at the front used for cropping vegetation. Iguanodon has played a significant role in popularizing dinosaurs in culture and science. It has been featured in numerous books, movies, and exhibits, making it one of the most recognized dinosaurs worldwide. One of the most distinctive features of Ouranosaurus is its sail-like structure on its back, formed by elongated neural spines. Recent studies suggest that this sail might have been used for thermoregulation, allowing the dinosaur to control its body temperature, or for display purposes, possibly for attracting mates or intimidating rivals. Some scientists propose that the sail could have served as a storage area for fat reserves, similar to how some modern mammals like camels store fat in their humps. Ouranosaurus had a broad, flat beak and batteries of teeth that suggest it was adapted to feeding on tough, fibrous plants. Its jaws were capable of a grinding motion, which allowed it to process a variety of vegetation. The environment where it lived was likely a mix of river deltas, floodplains, and coastal areas, suggesting that it could have been semi-aquatic. Recent interpretations of fossil evidence suggest that it may have been a social animal, living in herds. This behavior would have provided protection against predators and facilitated complex social interactions within the group. Ouranosaurus shows some convergent evolutionary features with hadrosaurs, such as its specialized dental arrangement and beak. This suggests that despite being an earlier relative, it had already developed some of the key adaptations seen in its later, more derived relatives. Alterinus was herbivorous and bipedal when walking or running, but probably became quadrupedal when feeding from the ground. According to the original description, the entire body probably extended 8 meters from snout to tail tip. The skull alone is about 76 centimeters long, with a wide mouth and a distinctive tall arch on top of its snout, from which this dinosaur derives its name. The characteristic arched snout of Alterinus was formed primarily by the nasal bones, and a similar structure is seen on the snout of the Australian Muttaburrasaurus. Many different functions have been proposed for the nasal arch. It may have housed tissues to cool the blood, conserve water, or enhance the sense of smell. Alternatively, it may have facilitated communication through vocalization or visual display. As only 2 skulls have been located, it is entirely possible that the arched snout is only found in one sex, in which case it may have been used for sexual display, like in modern-day elephant seals. Like all ornithopods, Probactrosaurus was an herbivorous dinosaur. In 2010, Gregory Paul estimated its length at 5.5 meters and its weight at 1 ton. It was lightly built, with relatively long and slender arms and hands and only a small thumb spike. It had a narrow snout, an elongated lower jaw and tooth batteries, each consisting of a superimposed double row of flattened cheek teeth. A third row of replacement teeth was incipient. Probably predominantly quadrupedal, it shared some common features with the later duck-billed dinosaurs. The generic name refers to Rozdestvinsky's hypothesis that Probactrosaurus would be the direct ancestor of Bactrosaurus, a notion now discarded. A typical Bactrosaurus would have been 6 meters long and weighed 1.2 tons. It was an early relative of Lambeosaurus and shows a number of iguanodont-like features, including 3 stacked teeth for each visible tooth, small maxillary teeth, and an unusually powerful build for a hadrosaur. It shows features intermediate between those of the 2 main hadrosaurid groups. Its femur measured 80 centimeters long. In 2003, evidence of tumors, including hemangiomas, desmoplastic fibroma, metastatic cancer and osteoblastoma was discovered in fossilized Bactrosaurus skeletons. Rothschild tested dinosaur vertebrae for tumors using computerized tomography and fluoroscope screening. The tumors may have been caused by environmental factors or genetic propensity. Gongpoquansaurus is an extinct genus of basal hadrosauroid dinosaur that was not formally named until 2014, while the name was a nomen nudum for many years previously. It was collected in 1992 at Zhongguo Formation, in Mazongshan, Gansu Province. The specimen was first described and named by Lu Junchang in 1997 as the third species of Probactrosaurus. Following its description, several studies found it to be less derived than the type species of Probactrosaurus in relation to Hadrosauridae. Therefore, Gongpoquansaurus had been suggested, yet informally, as a replacement generic name. Telmatosaurus was a relatively small hadrosaur, measuring approximately 5 meters in length and 600 kilograms in body mass, which has been explained as an instance of insular dwarfism. A juvenile Telmatosaurus examined by Dumbrava bears a large non-cancerous tumor called an amyloblastoma on its lower jaw. The presence of this benign tumor in a dinosaur is a first, as before the discovery, amyloblastomas were known only from modern mammals and reptiles. The discovery of an amyloblastoma in a dinosaur gives evidence that the development of benign tumors is a basal characteristic, not just a relatively modern condition. It is unlikely that the tumor caused the dinosaur any serious pain during its early stages of development, just as in humans with the same condition, but researchers can tell from its size that this particular dinosaur died before it reached adulthood. Since its preserved remains consist of only the two lower jaws, no one can ascertain its cause of death. The researchers were left wondering whether the presence of the amyloblastoma could have contributed to its death. During the late Cretaceous, one of the larger islands in the European archipelago was located around the northeast coast of the modern Adriatic Sea and the Dinaric Alps. And towards the very end of the Cretaceous, this Adriatic Dinaric island was home to the hadrosauroid dinosaur Tethyschodros. Surprisingly, it wasn't very closely related to earlier European hadrosauroids, and its ancestors seem to have actually originated in Asia, island hopping their way westward over to the Adriatic Dinaric. At around 4 meters long, it was much smaller than most of its close relatives and was another example of insular dwarfism. But it had some odd body proportions. Its head was relatively large, its neck and tail were fairly short, its limbs were long and gracile, and it had a reduced number of fingers in its hands. It appears to have been specialized for running, sort of like a dinosaur mimicking a horse. It also had a weird, highly serrated edge to its beak, which in life would have been even more pronounced and spiky looking. The purpose of this is unknown for certain, but it may have been an adaptation for a specific food source, and since some hadrosaurs seem to have occasionally snacked on shellfish for extra protein, it's possible Tethyschodros was also doing something more omnivorous along the shores of its island home. The basal hadrosaurs laid the foundation for the evolutionary advancements observed in later hadrosaurids. These early hadrosaurs featured relatively simple dental structures and body plans, which gradually evolved into more specialized forms. As hadrosaurs diversified towards the end of the Cretaceous, they developed complex dental batteries and larger body sizes. This evolutionary trajectory allowed hadrosaurs to exploit a wider range of ecological niches and become highly successful, with their diverse adaptations contributing to their prominence in late Cretaceous ecosystems. The transition from basal hadrosaurs to these more derived forms reflects a remarkable example of evolutionary innovation and ecological diversification.